Today's video is sponsored by Luisa Jewelry. Luisa is a jewelry company that's committed to sustainability by offsetting 100% of their carbon emissions. This is something I really respect in a company, and this on top of the fact that they strive to offer their pieces at prices that appeal to all budgets is something that I really appreciate. Their pieces start at just $39 and they range into higher end prices, but there's truly something for everyone. I love all of the new pieces that I got. They're really dainty and pretty, and they go with anything that you wear. And you can also layer them if that's your style. You can wear more than one necklace at a time and show off numerous styles. For me personally, I prefer to wear them alone, but these styles work really well together as well. Luisa is currently running their Black Friday sale, and this will allow you to save even more off of already affordable prices. Their products make amazing gifts for the holiday season, or if you just want to treat yourself like I have, you can do that too. Highly recommend, and you can get something cute for yourself to show off and show off to your friends. Thank you for watching, everyone, and you can check out the sale at the link down below in my bio. Hi everyone, and welcome to my tutorial about clipping horses without sedation using positive reinforcement. For those of you who don't know, clipping as a practice is generally used to prevent horses from sweating excessively when they are in hard work. For the most part, people tend to do it in the winter once they start to grow longer coats because they take a lot longer to dry when they sweat in their winter coats, and they can catch a chill if they don't dry quick enough. So clipping the areas where they sweat the most allows them to dry quicker, and it means that they are less likely to be cold and damp throughout the winter. When you do clip, you also need to be more mindful of how you blanket them, because if you're taking off the protection of their winter coat, you will need to make up for that in terms of blanketing. So that's something to take into account, but it's a really good practice to use for horses that are in work throughout the winter because it helps them dry faster, and it's less maintenance for the rider than to kind of stand around with a cooler on and wait for hours until they finally dry off. So that's kind of the purpose of clipping, and a lot of people sedate for it because horses don't particularly like the procedure, but this is how I teach horses how to clip well without sedation. Before clipping, you want to make sure that your horse is nice and clean. In the winter time, I just use a dry spray-on shampoo to achieve this and make sure they're nice and dry, and that I'm not clipping them on a rainy day where the hair is damp. So that's for starters before we get into the training thing. Make sure your horse is clean. So when introducing a horse who has never seen clippers before to clippers, I highly recommend not planning to clip them in the same day you do the intro. Banksy, I'm obviously not clipping this year because he's a yearling and he's not in work. So here I'm just running the clippers and getting him used to being near them. If he wants to walk away, that's okay. I let him walk to the end of the rope so long as he's not getting into buckets or anything. And then when he comes back, he gets rewarded. So basically what I'm doing in doing this is teaching him that being near the clippers is the most highly rewarding, but that if he chooses to leave the situation, I'm not going to go chase him with the clippers. But if he comes near the clippers, he gets a treat. So that's kind of what I'm showing him here, and he's nervous. You can tell he's not sure if he wants to stand near the clippers. He's kind of dancing around and doesn't really want to be super close to them. But when he comes close, I give him lots of treats. Right here, which is where I kind of started to end the session, was when he was coming and staying in my space for an extended period of time like this. And then even a few times he touched the clippers, which is with his nose, and in those cases I gave him even more treats than I would for the other attempts. I only worked on this for about 3 minutes and then called it once he stood near the clippers for several seconds, which you can see here. So this is the end of the session. I didn't want to push it. He was having a pleasant experience and he was getting braver as he went. So this is where I would stop, especially with a young horse. And this is how I would start with introducing them. So if they aren't comfortable standing near the clippers, I would not put the clippers on their body to clip them yet. So do this stage first. Percy has also never been clipped before, but he was showing less fear towards the clippers than Banksy was. So I'm just standing here, like same thing I was doing with Banksy, holding the clippers near him, getting him used to being around him, and then rewarding him when he shows interest in the clippers, encouraging him to step forward and come into my space near the clippers, and just kind of letting him check it out and rewarding him for any attempt to come towards the scary object, which in this case is the clippers. So this is kind of a boring, repetitive stage where you're just getting them used to being in the general vicinity of the clippers and letting them take their time getting comfortable with them. In this stage, I'd really encourage everyone to be careful not to kind of chase them with the clippers or make them feel trapped or pull on them on the rope and kind of force them to stand in the position with the clippers. If for horses that are super nervous, I definitely would not have them tied. I would either have someone hold them, or I would just loop the rope through a tie ring and hold the end of it so that you can release the pressure if they get nervous. Once they are fairly comfortable with the clippers in their general vicinity, I then put the body of the clippers against their skin so that they can feel the vibration of it, and then I reward them for tolerating the vibration. And then once they aren't flinching at the vibration, I'll actually start to clip them, which is what I'm doing here, and then I'm rewarding him after or during every time that I put the clipper up and down him. And with Percy, the vibration wasn't overly aversive to him. Some horses really do not like the feeling and will be super ticklish and actively flinching as you touch them. And in those cases, you would need to do this a lot slower. If they're still flinching and their skin is kind of trembling away when you touch them with the clippers, I wouldn't recommend just starting the clip job. I would get them used to just feeling the body of the clippers on them and really heavily rewarding that until they stop flinching. It's really important to remember that all horses have their things that bother them more than others. So if you have a horse that is having a really high fear reaction to the clippers, it will take longer to get them used to having the clippers around, and you might need to do more days of repetition just getting them used to having the clippers in their general space without even touching them with it. And that's okay. You don't want to rush it and put the horse in a position where they feel trapped and where you're kind of chasing them with the clippers when they're not comfortable even being near the clippers, let alone being touched by them. If you do that, it'll end up taking longer in the long run to get them comfortable clipping without sedation. So definitely take your time and do not touch them with the clippers until they're at least comfortable being in the same space as the clippers while they're running. Also, it's generally a good idea to make sure that you have at least one other set of hands to just hold the horse for you and kind of help you with feeding them treats if you're not able to do it all with like you clipping and handling the treats situation and stuff. Obviously, in all these clips, it's just me because I needed someone to either film for me, or in the case of Banksy and Milo's clip jobs, I was here alone, so the camera was actually just set up on its own and I was doing it all on my own. But I know all of these horses quite well, and I've taught a lot of horses how to clip, so it's a little different for me, but I would highly recommend having an extra set of hands to help because it definitely reduces the whole stress of the situation and it makes it way easier for you to focus on clipping and have someone else handle the reward system and making sure that the horse doesn't feel too stressed or trapped. It's important to keep in mind too that the more pleasant you make the clipping experience and the less stress the horse experiences, the better they will be the next time you do it, which is why I caution anyone in hitting their horse if they try to kick out at them or anything like that, because like I said, the clippers can be uncomfortable on the body and you don't want to increase stress. So if they do that, just be mindful of what part of their body caused that reaction and be aware of the fact that they just might be ticklish or it just might be uncomfortable. So anyways, both Banksy and Percy did fantastic for their first intro to clippers. Percy was an absolute superstar, setting the bar really high. He's less skin sensitive than Milo, so he's a good example of a horse that was more fearful of the sound of the clippers than anything, and he tolerated the sensation of them very well. In these next clips with Milo, you'll see what I mean about a horse who's more skin sensitive, even though Milo has been introduced to clippers, so he's had a bit more clipping training, but he's more sensitive and it's more aversive. Hi everyone and welcome to my clipping tutorial. So Milo has obviously been clipped before, but I only usually clip him about once a year, so I always reintroduce him to the clippers. So what I'm doing here is I've just untied him and I'm holding the end of the rope and just letting the clippers run so that he can hear them. And then when he's standing quietly and kind of just letting me come closer to the clippers, I always reward him and tell him he's a good boy. He isn't really afraid of the clippers per se, but he doesn't like the feeling of the vibration on him, especially on his stomach. So for me and him, getting him to clip well without sedation is largely just about getting him to tolerate the actual discomfort of feeling the clippers, because he doesn't like the feeling of his hair getting removed or back combed by the clippers. So I've had to do a lot of work with him, just making it really rewarding to have the clippers around so that he's at least willing to tolerate something that he doesn't like and that I doubt I will ever get him to like. I'm not very good at making both sides even when I'm doing a partial clip, but drawing the line definitely helps if the horse has a coat that will accommodate a dry erase marker. So that's what I've just done on him. And then when I start clipping, I'm always really careful to start on the shoulder or the neck or wherever the horse is least likely to get upset about. Don't start on the belly or an area where you know they're most likely to dislike the feel of the clippers, because you want to start at the easiest part and then build as they get comfortable and relaxed with the clippers. So I'm just doing that here, and then I also let him lick my hand if he wants to, because that's kind of like a pacifying behavior for him, and he doesn't love the feel of the clippers, as I've said, so he's just tolerating it. He doesn't like being clipped, but he will tolerate it now because I always reward him when I'm clipping and I don't get mad at him. Especially for horses who haven't clipped before or who have clipped very infrequently, if they step away from you while you're clipping them, I would recommend not following them with the clippers, but stopping and just encouraging them to step back towards you and then rewarding when they approach you. Even if they don't come close enough for you to immediately start clipping them again, reward the approach, reward them when they stand as the clippers get closer to them, and then start clipping again once they've stood still. I also grabbed Milo a hay net, which he's not eating because he prefers the treats right now, and he also doesn't particularly like being clipped, as I mentioned. So he's not eating the hay. He picks at it here or there throughout it, but for horses that are really food motivated and really like hay more than treats, or at least at a similar level to the treats, putting a hay net up is actually pretty helpful for getting them to be calm, because it encourages grazing and chewing behavior, which naturally calms horses. So if they will eat out of a hay net, and if you have somewhere where you can safely hang one, I definitely recommend putting it up, especially if you're doing a clip that will take a little bit longer, like a full body clip, or if it's just going to take longer because it's their first time. It's really helpful to have the hay net up there just to encourage calm behavior and make it a more pleasant experience. Another thing to be mindful of is that if your horse has really sensitive skin, definitely keep an eye on how hot your clipper blades are getting. Milo has very sensitive skin, and he's definitely my most reactive horse. So even if the blades start to get like a little bit warm, he starts to hate being clipped even more than he already does. So I have Cool Lube, which is like a spray that you put on the blades to help lubricate them, and it also cools them down. So with him, I'm cooling the blades frequently because he has less of a tolerance for the warm blades than most horses do, and I'm especially mindful of this when I'm doing his belly and areas that I know that he doesn't like. And as you can see in these clips, he's definitely more agitated when I'm clipping around his belly. Every horse will have their areas that they are more comfortable being groomed or clipped and less comfortable being groomed or clipped. And it's important to be mindful of this and just kind of monitor their behavior. And if it's an area that you know they're a little ticklish or more sensitive, just don't push as hard with the clippers and take your time. Don't make it really unpleasant or difficult for them. If they really don't like being touched somewhere, particularly like around the flanks is a really common area, you're probably not going to ever make them enjoy the sensation of the clippers there. However, you can make it a lot more tolerable by not using too much force, by not letting your clipper blades get too hot, and by doing shorter segments with lots of reward. As you can see here, like now that he has his hay and I've been rewarding lots, he gets less agitated as I go with clipping around his rib cage and belly. So in these clips nearer to the end of my clip job, you can see that he's significantly more relaxed than at the beginning, which is great. So giving him treats and doing the correct timing and just making sure that the situation is more comfortable as I go has relaxed his behavior, and he's got considerably better each year that I clip him, which is really good. So seeing that change in behavior is an indicator that what you're doing with your reinforcements and whatnot is actually working. And Milo is a really good example of a hypersensitive horse that is very particular about where they're being touched and with what. He does not like the clippers, so working with him has been more so about working through teaching him how to tolerate something that he doesn't like the sensation of, rather than teaching him not to be afraid of it. And with horses like him, it's especially important not to get mad at him, because if he ever were to raise a leg at me or pin his ears or turn and like nip at me or something, he does it to warn you when he's being uncomfortable about something. And in most cases, when he does that when I'm clipping him, it's because the blades are getting too warm, and then that serves as a reminder of, Shelby, cool down your blades. And then if I fix it and keep going, he gets better as he goes, because I've addressed what he has shown me the problem is. So I highly recommend for all of you with your horses to kind of be mindful of what their behavior is telling you and do what you can to make the situation as pleasant as possible for them, because their behavior will adapt and get better once they realize that you're actually accommodating them in that way and making it more tolerable and comfortable for them. So that's kind of the gist of my method on teaching horses how to stand quietly when clipped. I've had a lot of success teaching lots of young horses to clip using this, and it results in quieter, happier horses, even if they don't particularly like the sensation of actually being clipped. And it means that I don't have to use any drugs or twitches or other forms of restraints to keep them calm while clipping. So I highly recommend. You'll save money on drugs, and you and your horse will be happier and more adjustable because of it. Let me know how it works for you if any of you guys decide to try this on your horses, and all the best of luck in working with your horses and teaching them how to be calm with anything you decide to do in an ethical manner. And I hope this was a nice video for you guys to watch. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can check out my merch store in the description down below, and you can also check out my other forms of social media where I do lots of articles and other stuff on all things training related. Thank you for watching, and thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it.